The day after Dad's funeral, while casseroles still crowded the counter and relatives whispered in the living room, someone knocked on the door. Not just any knock, the family knock. 2 slow, 3 quick, then the ridiculous drum roll Dad invented when we were kids. Nobody had used it since Mara left. I froze with a plate in my hands. My brother Nate looked up from the sink, his face pale. The knock came again. I opened the door, half expecting some cousin trying to be cute. But there she was. Mara. 12 years gone, and she stood on the porch like she'd just run to the store and come back late. She looked older, hollow cheeks, a scar above her eyebrow, a haircut that didn't suit her, but it was her. "Hi, Emma," she said, like no time had passed. "I'm home." Behind me, conversation stopped. Aunt Val gasped. Cherry, Dad's old mutt, bolted from the kitchen and jumped into Mara's arms, whining like she'd been waiting for her all along. I stepped aside before I could think better of it. Mara crossed the threshold, still smelling like clove gum and rain. She hugged Cherry, then pulled something from her coat pocket. A black envelope. My name on the front. Nate's too. Written in Dad's blocky handwriting. "He gave this to me months ago," she said. "Told me to bring it when I came back." Inside was a brass key and a note. "Let her in. She knows where the rest is. D." Nate read it over my shoulder. "The rest of what?" Mara's smirk faltered. "His instructions. For the lighthouse." I laughed, a short, bitter sound. "That rotting wreck at the edge of town? It's condemned." "It's ours," she said simply. "Always was. Dad promised me." Aunt Val's voice shook. "He never mentioned that to me." "He wouldn't," Mara said. "It was supposed to be a surprise." The room spun. Dad had left us a crumbling lighthouse? And given Mara, the sister who disappeared with no explanation, the key? I wanted to tell her to get out. To say we were fine without her. But before I could, she added softly. "Mom asked me to come home." My breath caught. "Mom's been gone for 5 years." Mara looked straight at me. "No. She hasn't." The room went so still you could hear the refrigerator hum. Everyone stared at Mara like she'd spoken in another language. "She's gone," Nate snapped, his voice louder than it needed to be. "We buried her." "Don't stand there and say." "I didn't mean it like that," Mara cut in, holding up her hands. "I meant she's alive, Emma. She didn't die when you thought she did." My stomach lurched. "That's not funny." "I'm not joking." Her voice was steady, and that scared me more than anything. "Dad called me months ago. He said Mom had been living with her sister in Michigan. Quietly. Away from all this." She gestured at the crowded room, the mourners, the house bursting with casseroles and grief. "He said when the time came, I should come back, because I was the only one Mom trusted with the truth." Aunt Val swore under her breath. "That's impossible." "We held a service. We had a headstone put up." Nate slammed his glass down on the counter so hard it cracked. "She's lying. Just like always." But the words tangled in my chest. Because if Mara was lying, why had Dad written her name on that envelope? Why had he trusted her with the key? Mara looked at me then, really looked, like she was trying to drag me across the invisible line she stood on. "You don't believe me, do you?" I didn't answer. She dropped onto the couch like she owned the place again, her suitcase still sitting in the hall. "Dad left the lighthouse to us. To me. But there's more. Mom's part of it. You'll see." The room buzzed with whispers. Cousins muttered, aunts exchanged looks. No one knew what to say. Finally, Uncle Rob cleared his throat. "If your father did leave property in his will, we'll find out soon enough. The lawyer reads it tomorrow. Until then, maybe everyone should cool off." But the damage was already done. The word was out, Mara was back, Dad had left her something, and Mom, our mom, might not be dead after all. That night, long after the guests had gone, I found Nate sitting in Dad's chair, staring at the envelope. "She's trying to rip us apart again," he muttered. "And you're letting her." I wanted to argue. But the truth was, part of me needed to know. If Mara was lying, I'd bury her with her lies once and for all. But if she wasn't, then we'd been living a lie for 5 years. And Dad had been the one to keep it. The lawyer's office was cramped and smelled faintly of dust and coffee. Nate sat on one side of me, arms crossed so tight his knuckles were white. Mara sat on the other, looking infuriatingly calm, like she'd been rehearsing for this moment. Mr. Connors, Dad's lawyer, adjusted his glasses and shuffled papers. "Your father's estate isn't large," he began. "Some savings, the house, his personal effects. But there is one unusual element." Nate muttered, "Here we go." Connors continued. "The lighthouse property on Bishop's Point. As you know, it's been condemned for decades. Technically, it still belongs to your family. Your father was the last listed caretaker." The word landed heavy in my chest, caretaker. Not owner. Caretaker. Connors went on, "In his will, he bequeaths the property, and all associated records, to his eldest child, Mara." Nate shot out of his chair. "Absolutely not. She left. She abandoned us. She doesn't get to waltz back in and collect prizes." Connors didn't flinch. "It's in writing, Mr. Pierce. Your father's instructions were clear." Mara smirked, but only slightly. "Guess he still trusted me more than you, Nate." I put a hand on his arm before he could explode, but it was like trying to stop a train. "He trusted you?" Nate barked. "The same daughter who took money from his safe before disappearing for 12 years? The one who never called, not once, when he was sick?" Mara didn't even blink. "Maybe he knew why I left. Maybe he understood more than you think." The air in the room was thick enough to choke on. Connors slid a manila folder across the desk. "Your father left journals, letters, and instructions regarding the property. He wrote that whoever inherits it should not act rashly until they've read everything." I reached for the folder, but Mara's hand landed on it first. Her nails clicked against the cardboard. "I'll take it." She tucked it under her arm like it was already hers. On the walk out, Nate muttered to me, "She's going to tear us apart. Just watch." And yet, as Mara stood in the doorway with the folder pressed to her chest, I couldn't shake the look in her eyes. Not smug, not victorious. Something darker. Something that almost looked like fear. I told myself I wasn't going to look. That I'd let Mara play her games and keep her folder like a trophy. But that night, while the house creaked with silence and Nate's angry footsteps had finally faded upstairs, I found Mara in the kitchen. She was at the table, the folder open, Dad's handwriting spilling across the pages of one of his old composition notebooks. She didn't even try to hide it. "Couldn't sleep either?" she asked. I sat down across from her. "What's in there?" For a second, I thought she wouldn't tell me. Then she pushed the notebook toward me. Dad's handwriting was as familiar as my own, blocky, patient letters that looked like they'd been carved instead of written. "The lighthouse has been in our family for generations. Not for navigation, but as a record. A safe place. Every caretaker before me has stored documents here. Birth records. Death records. Things no one else was meant to see. That's why the county never seized it outright. Too many quiet debts owed." I frowned, flipping the page. "If Mara returns, give her the key. She will know what to do with the files. Emma can help her. Nate must never find out." The words blurred for a moment, my pulse hammering in my ears. "Nate must never find out what?" I asked. Mara didn't answer. She just slid another envelope across the table. My name was on it. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were photocopies, old birth certificates, faded with time. One with my name. One with Mara's. And one with Nate's. Except Nate's didn't list Dad as the father. It was another man's name. A name I didn't recognize. I pressed the paper flat with my trembling hand. Why would Dad keep this? Why not tell us? Mara leaned back, her face unreadable. Because it would have destroyed everything. He hated Nate because Nate wasn't his. He left me the lighthouse so I could decide what to do with the truth. Upstairs, a floorboard creaked. Nate's voice, low and cold, drifted down the stairs. What truth? Mara's face didn't change. She didn't even flinch. She just whispered, too late. Nate's footsteps were slow, deliberate, like he already knew enough to be dangerous. He stopped halfway down the stairs, arms crossed, eyes locked on the papers spread across the kitchen table. What truth? He repeated, voice low and steady. I scrambled to cover the documents, but Mara didn't move. She just sat there, calm as stone. Don't, I hissed at her. But she leaned back in her chair and said it anyway. You're not Dad's son. The words landed like a bomb. Nate froze, his face tightening in disbelief. What the hell did you just say? I shot Mara a furious look, but she only shrugged. He was going to find out eventually. Nate's jaw clenched as he stepped into the kitchen. You're lying. You've always lied. I slid the photocopy across the table before I could stop myself. It's here, Nate. The certificate. Dad wasn't listed. His eyes flicked down, scanning the page. He went pale, then red, then pale again. His fists curled at his sides. So this is why he hated me. No, I said quickly, but my voice cracked. Nate, listen. He slammed his palm against the table, rattling the coffee mugs. He knew all along. He let me grow up in that house, calling him Dad, thinking I belonged, when the whole time, I was just the mistake. You're not a mistake, I said, my throat raw. Don't, he snapped, pointing at me. Then he turned the finger on Mara. And you, why are you even here? You disappear for over a decade, and suddenly you're the one who gets the inheritance? The lighthouse? The answers? Who the hell made you queen of this family? Mara's smirk faltered for the first time. Dad did, she said, softer now. Nate's laugh was short, sharp, ugly. Of course he did. Anything to spit in my face one last time. He grabbed the folder, scattering papers across the floor, and stormed out the back door. The screen slammed so hard it shook the frame. I collapsed into the chair across from Mara. My hands were shaking. Why would you tell him like that? Because lies rot families from the inside, she said, eyes hard. And ours is already hollow enough. For the first time in years, I almost believed her. Nate didn't come home that night. His truck was gone from the driveway, and every time my phone buzzed, I hoped it was him. But the only messages came from relatives who'd heard whispers of a fight. Word travels fast when a family's grieving, especially when the prodigal daughter is back in town. By morning, Mara was standing in the kitchen with her coat already on, the brass key dangling from her hand. We're going to the lighthouse, she said. I shook my head. Not now. Not after last night. Yes, now. She set the key on the table with a deliberate clink. Dad didn't leave this place to me for nothing. Whatever's inside is the reason he trusted me. And if Nate's out there tearing himself apart, we need answers before he does something we can't undo. Part of me wanted to tell her to shove her key and her cryptic speeches where the sun didn't shine. But another part, the part that had stared at that birth certificate until the letters blurred, needed to know what Dad had been hiding. We drove in silence, the cliffs rising ahead of us, the lighthouse jutting from the rocks like a rotten tooth. The county had boarded it up years ago, but the padlock on the gate clicked open easily when Mara slid the brass key in. Inside, the air was damp and smelled of salt and mildew. Our footsteps echoed as we climbed the spiral staircase, each groan of wood under our weight reminding me why this place had been condemned. At the top, under a canvas tarp, sat a heavy wooden chest with Dad's initials carved deep into the lid. Mara knelt, fitted the key into the lock, and opened it with a snap. Inside were rows of binders, folders, and ledgers, all neatly labeled in Dad's handwriting. Names. Dates. Bank statements. Old photographs. What is all this? I whispered, running my hand over the spines. Records, Mara said. The kind you don't want anyone else to see. I pulled out a binder marked 1978 to 1992 and flipped it open. Inside were copies of loan agreements, deeds, even letters signed by local officials. Some of the names were familiar, families we grew up with, people who still lived in town. Mara's eyes gleamed as she scanned a page. This is leverage. This is why the county never took the lighthouse from us. Dad was the keeper of everyone's secrets. My stomach twisted. So we're blackmailers now? Caretakers, she corrected, her voice sharp. Every generation had one. And now it's us. Before I could answer, the slam of a door echoed below. Someone else was inside the lighthouse. And I knew, without seeing him, exactly who it was. The footsteps echoed up the spiral staircase, slow and deliberate. Mara froze with one hand still on the chest. I shoved the binder back inside and slammed the lid shut, like that would make a difference. Nate appeared in the doorway, his shirt wrinkled, eyes bloodshot, jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. He didn't say anything at first, just stared at the chest like it was glowing. I knew it, he finally said, his voice raw. I knew there was more. Nate, I started. But he cut me off, pointing at Mara. What the hell gives you the right? You walk out, vanish for over a decade, and suddenly you're the one Dad trusted with the family vault? Mara didn't flinch. Because I'm the eldest. Because Dad knew you couldn't handle it. That last part was a mistake. Nate's face twisted, and he stepped into the room. Couldn't handle it? You mean couldn't handle finding out I was the bastard all along? Nate, I tried again, but the words lodged in my throat. He jabbed a finger at me. You knew, didn't you? That's why you two were whispering last night. You let me sit there for years, hating myself, wondering why he looked at me like I was nothing. And you knew. Tears stung my eyes. I didn't know until yesterday. Bullshit. He swung his gaze back to Mara. And you, what are you gonna do with it? Huh? Hold it over me? Over everyone in this town? Blackmail them with Dad's little collection of dirt? Mara's smirk was gone now. Her eyes were steady, but her voice was tight. I don't want to destroy anyone, Nate. I want to protect what Dad built. This is leverage. Power. Without it, the county would have bulldozed this place years ago. Power, Nate spat, pacing now. That's all you care about. Not Dad. Not this family. Just keeping your little crown. The room crackled with tension, the three of us caught in the stale, salty air, the chest sitting between us like a live grenade. Then Nate did something I'll never forget. He picked up a rusted crowbar leaning against the wall and slammed it against the chest. The wood cracked, the binders inside spilling into the dust. If Dad wanted me to stay in the dark, then fine, he growled. I'll burn the whole damn thing before I let either of you use it against me. Mara lunged forward to stop him, and I grabbed her arm. But in that split second, I knew, this wasn't about the lighthouse anymore. This was about us. And we were seconds from tearing ourselves apart. The crowbar splintered the chest again, another crack opening across the lid. Papers fanned out onto the dusty floor, pages curling with damp. Mara lunged, grabbing Nate's arm, but he shoved her off so hard she hit the wall with a grunt. Stop it. I shouted, but neither of them looked at me. Nate swung again, the crowbar slamming into the binders. All my life I've been treated like an outsider in my own damn house. If this is what Dad used to keep me in the dark, then it dies with him. Mara scrambled back to her feet, blood on her lip. You don't get to decide that. You're not even his son. The words hung in the air like a slap. Nate froze, chest heaving. Then his eyes sharpened, colder than I'd ever seen. Say that again. For a heartbeat, I thought he was going to hit her. I stepped between them, my palms up. Enough. Both of you. This isn't fixing anything. Nate's grip tightened on the crowbar. You think you're Dad's chosen one? That you get to inherit his dirty little empire just because you came out first? His gaze flicked to me, and something inside him cracked. And you knew and didn't tell me. You're just like him. Keeping secrets, acting like you're better than me. That's not true, I whispered, but my voice felt small. Nate looked at the spilled papers, then back at us. Fine. If you want secrets so bad, keep them. But don't come crying when the whole town finds out what Dad's been hoarding in here. He dropped the crowbar with a clang that made me flinch. Then he stormed down the stairs, his footsteps echoing until the door slammed below. The silence left behind was suffocating. Mara wiped the blood from her mouth, her hands shaking. If he takes this public, everything Dad built will burn. I knelt among the scattered papers, my fingers brushing names I recognized, neighbors, officials, people whose families had been woven into ours for generations. If Nate exposed it, the fallout would swallow not just us, but half the town. Then what do we do? I asked. Mara met my eyes, and for once, there was no smirk, no sharpness. Just a grim certainty. We protect it, she said. No matter the cost. And I realized she wasn't talking about the lighthouse. She was talking about us. About me. About choosing sides. For the first time, I wasn't sure which side I was on. By the next morning, the whole town was buzzing. Not with grief for Dad, not with sympathy for us, but with whispers. Nate had gone public. It started small. A post on Facebook with a photo of one of the binders, the names highlighted, the caption blunt. My father wasn't the man everyone thought he was. The lighthouse isn't just a ruin. It's a vault full of lies, blackmail, and dirt on half this town. And my sisters are trying to keep it hidden. Within an hour, the comments piled up. Some defending Dad, calling Nate bitter. Others asking questions, tagging names from the documents. And a few demanding to know exactly what was in those files. Mara slammed her phone on the table, pacing. He's going to ruin everything. People are already connecting dots. If this blows up, every debt Dad covered, every secret he protected, it all unravels. I scrolled through the post again, my stomach sinking. You think people won't believe him? They will if he keeps feeding them, Mara snapped. All it takes is one old loan, one shady land deal, one affair, and suddenly, the lighthouse isn't just our mess. It's everyone's. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed again. A text from Lily, our cousin. Is it true? About Nate? About Uncle's files? People are saying Dad's name is in there. I set the phone down, my chest tight. It's already happening. Mara stopped pacing. She looked at me hard, like she was testing me. Then we go to the lighthouse. We gather everything before he leaks more. If we don't, this family is finished. I stared at her, remembering the way she'd looked at Nate last night, like she'd been waiting her whole life to finally call him not Dad's son. What happens to Nate? I asked. Her jaw tightened. He made his choice. The air between us was sharp as glass. That night, as we drove back toward the cliffs, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Nate's truck was already parked outside the lighthouse. The headlights off. The door wide open. And smoke, thin, gray, curling from the roof. By the time we reached the lighthouse, flames were licking through the broken windows. The old wood, dry from decades of neglect, caught fast. Smoke billowed into the night sky, glowing orange against the cliffs. "Nate!" I screamed, stumbling out of the car. He was there, silhouetted in the doorway, the crowbar still in his hand. His face was streaked with soot, his eyes wild but strangely calm. "You wanted your secrets," he shouted over the roar of the fire. "You can keep them in ashes." Mara sprinted forward, but I grabbed her arm. "Don't." She jerked free, her voice raw. "Nate, stop. You'll kill yourself." He shook his head. "Better me than the rest of this family." Then he hurled the crowbar into the blaze and staggered back, coughing, his chest heaving. The heat forced us to retreat as the fire devoured everything: binders, letters, photographs. Decades of records gone in minutes. Dad's life's work, the leverage that had kept this family's grip on the town, burned to nothing. The fire department came too late to save much. By dawn, the lighthouse was a blackened husk, its stone base still standing but everything else reduced to smoldering rubble. Nate sat on the tailgate of his truck, an oxygen mask dangling around his neck. He looked hollow, emptied out. When I approached, he didn't meet my eyes. "I ended it," he said simply. "No more lies. No more inheritance. No more keeping me in the dark." Mara stood a few feet away, her coat wrapped tight, her expression unreadable. She hadn't said a word since the flames took the chest. For once, I didn't try to mediate. I just sat beside Nate in the cold morning air, the three of us watching the smoke rise from what used to be our family's greatest secret. Later, people in town would argue over what really happened. Some would say Dad had been a fixer, helping neighbors quietly when the banks wouldn't. Others whispered he'd been a blackmailer, hoarding evidence to keep people under his thumb. With the records gone, the truth was just ash scattered on the wind. All I knew was this: Mara came back to take her place. Nate burned his down. And me? I was stuck in the middle, the one who would always wonder if the family we thought we had was ever real at all. When the crowd thinned and the fire trucks left, Nate finally spoke again. "You two can keep fighting over ghosts," he said. "I'm done." He drove away without looking back. Mara turned to me, her eyes hard, her voice low. "It should have been ours." I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because watching the smoke curl into the morning sky, I realized maybe Nate had been right. Maybe some things weren't meant to be inherited. Some things were meant to burn.